You know that feeling when someone you trust completely betrays you? When your own flesh and blood stabs you in the back while you're fighting for your life in a hospital bed? Well, my daughter Jessica thought she was being smart when she sold my 1987 Chevy Camaro while I was unconscious in the ICU. She thought she knew everything about that car. She was wrong. Dead wrong. And what she didn't know about what I kept hidden in that trunk would change both our lives forever. Before I tell you this story that'll make your blood boil and then shock you to your core, smash that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Trust me, you're going to want to hear how this ends. Drop a comment below if you've ever been betrayed by family, because after today's story, you'll know you're not alone. Now let me take you back to where this nightmare began. My name is Danny Morrison, and I'm 58 years old. I've lived in Cedar Rapids, Iowa my entire life, working as a machinist at the local plant for 34 years. I'm not a wealthy man, never claimed to be, but I've always been proud of the fact that I earned everything I have through honest work and sacrifice. The most prized possession I owned wasn't my house, wasn't my tools, and it sure wasn't the measly savings account I'd managed to scrape together over the decades. It was my 1987 Chevy Camaro IROC Z, midnight blue with silver racing stripes. That car was more than just metal and chrome to me. It was my sanctuary, my pride, and the last connection I had to my late wife, Patricia. Patricia and I bought that Camaro together in 1989, 2 years after we got married. We were young, stupid in love, and thought we had all the time in the world. She'd always wanted a muscle car, said it made her feel free when we'd cruise down the back roads on Sunday afternoons, windows down, her auburn hair whipping in the wind as she laughed at some joke I'd told for the 100th time. We couldn't afford much back then, but we saved every penny for 2 years to buy that car. Patricia would pack our lunches instead of letting us eat out, and I'd work double shifts whenever they were available. When we finally had enough money and drove that Camaro off the lot, Patricia cried tears of joy. I'll never forget how she looked in the passenger seat that first day, her green eyes sparkling as she reached over and squeezed my hand. "Promise me something, Danny," she said as we sat in our driveway, still in disbelief that the car was actually ours. "Promise me you'll never sell this car. No matter what happens, this will always be ours." I promised, and I meant it. We had Jessica 3 years later in 1992. Patricia was so excited to be a mom, and for the first few years, everything was perfect. We'd take family drives in the Camaro, Jessica secured in her car seat in the back, Patricia singing along to the radio while I drove us to the lake or to visit Patricia's parents in Des Moines. But life has a way of crushing your dreams when you least expect it. In 2003, when Jessica was just 11 years old, Patricia was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer. The doctors gave her 6 months. She fought for 14. Those 14 months were the hardest and most beautiful of my life. Patricia faced death with a courage I could never possess, always worried more about Jessica and me than herself. During her final weeks, when the pain was so bad she could barely speak, she made me promise again about the car. "That car holds our best memories, Danny," she whispered, her once strong voice now barely audible. "Every Sunday drive, every laugh, every dream we shared, it's all in that car. Promise me you'll keep it. Promise me Jessica will understand why it matters." I promised again, holding her frail hand as tears streamed down my face. Patricia died on a Tuesday morning in March 2003. I was holding her hand when she took her last breath, and I swear I could feel a part of my soul leave with her. After the funeral, I couldn't drive the Camaro for 2 years. It sat in the garage, covered by a tarp, while Jessica and I learned how to live without the center of our universe. But eventually, I started taking it out again, usually just to drive around aimlessly. When I missed Patricia so much I thought the grief might kill me. Jessica never seemed interested in the car or the stories about her mother and our drives. She was a teenager by then, more concerned with friends and school than some old car and memories she was too young to fully remember. As Jessica grew older, our relationship became strained. She thought I was too sentimental, too stuck in the past. She'd roll her eyes when I'd tell stories about her mother, and she seemed embarrassed by what she called my obsession with the Camaro. She wanted me to sell it, to use the money for practical things like updating the kitchen or taking a vacation. "Dad, it's just a car," she'd say whenever the subject came up. "Mom's gone. Keeping some old car isn't going to bring her back." Those words cut deeper than she could possibly know, but I tried to be patient. She was young, and she'd lost her mother too. Grief affects everyone differently, and maybe her way of coping was to let go of the past while mine was to hold on to it. Jessica went away to college at the University of Iowa in 2010, studying business administration. She was smart, ambitious, and determined to make something of herself. I was proud of her, even if I felt like we were growing further apart with each passing year. She'd come home for holidays, but her visits felt more like obligations than genuine desire to spend time with her old man. After college, Jessica got a job at a marketing firm in Chicago. She made good money, much more than I ever did, and she seemed happy with her independent life in the big city. She'd call once a week, usually on Sunday evenings, and our conversations were polite but distant. She had her life, and I had mine. I kept working at the plant, kept living in the same house where Jessica grew up, and kept taking care of the Camaro. Every Sunday, weather permitting, I'd take it out for a drive. I'd go to the lake where Patricia and I used to park and watch the sunset, or I'd drive past the old diner where we had our first date. The car was my time machine, my way of feeling connected to the woman I still loved with every fiber of my being. In 2019, I started having chest pains. At first, I ignored them. What 53-year-old man wants to admit he might be falling apart? But when I collapsed at work one Tuesday afternoon, my supervisor called an ambulance, and I was rushed to Mercy Medical Center. The doctors told me I'd had a minor heart attack. Not life-threatening, they said, but a serious warning. I needed to change my lifestyle, take medication, and have regular checkups. Jessica flew in from Chicago, worried and guilty that she hadn't been around more. For a few days, it felt like we might reconnect, like my health scare might bring us closer together. But as soon as I was stable and released from the hospital, Jessica went back to Chicago and back to her busy life. Our weekly phone calls continued, but they felt even more perfunctory than before. I followed the doctor's orders as best I could. I took my medications, tried to eat better, and even joined a walking group at the community center. But I refused to give up my Sunday drives in the Camaro. That car wasn't just transportation or even just a hobby. It was my lifeline to Patricia, and I wasn't about to let some heart condition take that away from me too. The real crisis came in February of this year. I was working late at the plant trying to finish a job before the weekend, when the chest pains started again. This time they were worse, like someone was squeezing my heart with a vice. I managed to call 911 before I collapsed. I woke up 3 days later in the cardiac ICU. The doctors explained that I'd suffered a massive heart attack and had been unconscious since they brought me in. I'd undergone emergency surgery to insert stents, and for a while, they weren't sure if I was going to make it. Jessica was there when I woke up, sitting in the chair beside my bed, looking exhausted and scared. She'd taken emergency leave from her job and had been at the hospital almost constantly, the nurses told me later. For the first time in years, I felt like I had my daughter back. "I'm so sorry, Dad," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I should have been here more. I should have been taking better care of you." I was too weak to say much, but I squeezed her hand and tried to smile. Maybe this would be the wake-up call we both needed. Maybe almost losing each other would help us find our way back to being a real family again. I was wrong. The recovery was slow and painful. The doctor said I'd need at least 6 weeks before I could even think about going back to work, and even then, it would have to be light duty. Jessica stayed for the first week, helping me get settled at home, making sure I had groceries and my medications organized. Before she left to go back to Chicago, we had what I thought was a good conversation. She seemed genuinely concerned about my health and my future. She asked about my finances, whether I had enough saved for retirement, whether I'd considered selling the house and moving somewhere with lower cost of living. Then she brought up the Camaro. "Dad, I've been thinking," she said, her tone careful and measured. Maybe it's time to consider selling the car. I know it means a lot to you, but think about it practically. You're not supposed to be driving for at least another month, maybe longer. The insurance and maintenance costs are expensive, and you could probably get $15,000 or $20,000 for it. That money could really help with your medical bills and give you some financial security. I felt like she'd punched me in the stomach. Here I was, barely a week out of the hospital, still weak and vulnerable, and she was asking me to sell the one thing that connected me to her mother. "Jessica, we've talked about this before," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I made a promise to your mother. That car isn't just about money." She sighed, and I could see the frustration in her eyes. "Dad, you're being irrational. It's just a car. Mom would want you to be practical, to take care of yourself. She wouldn't want you holding on to some old car if it meant you couldn't afford proper medical care." "It's not just a car," I said, my voice getting stronger despite my physical weakness. "It's the last piece of your mother I have left. It's where all our best memories live. I'm not selling it, Jessica. End of discussion." She didn't argue further, but I could see she wasn't happy with my decision. The next morning, she flew back to Chicago, promising to check on me regularly and to come back if I needed anything. For the next 3 weeks, I focused on recovering. I did my physical therapy exercises, took my medications religiously, and slowly started feeling stronger. The hardest part was not being able to drive. I'd look out at the garage every morning, knowing the Camaro was sitting there under its cover, waiting for me to be well enough to take it out again. Jessica called every few days to check on me, and our conversations seemed normal enough. She asked about my recovery, whether I needed anything, how I was feeling. I told her about my progress, the physical therapy, my plans to return to work on light duty in a few more weeks. She never mentioned the car again, which I took as a good sign. I thought maybe she'd accepted my decision and we could move forward without that tension between us. I was such a fool. On a Thursday morning in early April, I was sitting in my kitchen having coffee and reading the paper when I heard a car door slam in my driveway. I wasn't expecting anyone, but I figured it might be one of my neighbors checking on me, or maybe the mailman with a package. I looked out the window and saw a young man, probably in his 20s, walking around my garage and peering through the windows. My heart started racing, not from my condition, but from a sudden, terrible suspicion. I threw on a robe and walked outside as fast as my still recovering body would allow. "Can I help you?" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. The young man turned and smiled. He was clean-cut, wearing khakis and a polo shirt, and he had a clipboard in his hand. "Mr. Morrison, I'm Tyler from Classic Car Transport Services. I'm here to pick up the 1987 Camaro. I have the paperwork right here." The world started spinning around me. I felt like I might collapse right there in my driveway. "There must be some mistake," I said, though deep down I already knew there wasn't. "I didn't sell any car." Tyler looked confused and checked his clipboard. "Well, sir, according to my paperwork, a Jessica Morrison contacted our service. She said she was your daughter and that you'd sold the vehicle but weren't able to arrange transport yourself due to health issues. She provided all the registration information and paid for our services up front. The new owner is supposed to meet us at our facility to complete the transaction." I felt like I was having another heart attack. The betrayal hit me harder than any physical pain I'd ever experienced. My own daughter, my only child, the person I loved more than life itself, had sold my car while I was recovering from nearly dying. "Where is my car?" I managed to ask, though my voice was barely a whisper. Tyler shifted uncomfortably. "Well, sir, we picked it up yesterday. Your daughter met us here with the keys and the title. She said you'd already signed everything and were expecting us to come. The car is at our facility now, waiting to be transported to the buyer." "Yesterday?" I said, my legs giving out. I had to lean against the garage door to keep from falling. "She was here yesterday?" "Yes, sir. Nice lady, very professional. She seemed to know all about the car and its history. She mentioned it was hard for the family to let it go, but that you'd decided it was the right thing to do for your health." I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to call Jessica right then and there and unleash all the rage and hurt I was feeling. But first, I had to try to fix this. "There's been a terrible mistake," I told Tyler, trying to sound calm and rational. "My daughter had no right to sell that car. I never agreed to this. I need you to stop the sale and return my car immediately." Tyler's expression changed from confusion to concern. "Sir, I understand this is upsetting, but we have all the proper paperwork. The title was signed, our services were paid for, and the buyer has already transferred the funds. From our perspective, this was a legitimate transaction." "The title was forged," I said desperately. "I never signed anything. This is theft. I'm calling the police." "Sir, please calm down," Tyler said, backing toward his truck. "I'm just the transport guy. You'll need to work this out with our office and the buyer. But I have to tell you, from a legal standpoint, if your daughter had access to the title and the keys, and if she represented herself as acting on your behalf—" He didn't finish the sentence, but I understood. Jessica had played this perfectly. She had a key to my house from when she was helping me recover. She knew where I kept the car title and registration. She knew all the details about the car. To any outside party, her story would be completely believable. After Tyler left, I sat in my garage staring at the empty space where my Camaro should have been. The oil stain on the concrete floor, the outline in the dust where the tires had been, those were the only evidence that my most precious possession had ever existed. I called Jessica immediately. The phone rang 4 times before she answered, and I could tell from her tone that she'd been expecting my call. "Hi, Dad. How are you feeling today?" "How am I feeling?" I couldn't believe the casual tone in her voice. "Jessica, what have you done?" There was a pause, and when she spoke again, her voice was different, colder, more calculating. "I did what needed to be done, Dad. You're being irrational about that car, and your health is more important than your nostalgia. I found a collector in Milwaukee who was willing to pay $18,000 for it. That money is going into your savings account to help with your medical expenses and your future." "You had no right," I shouted, not caring that my neighbors might hear. "That car wasn't yours to sell. I trusted you, Jessica. I let you into my house. I let you help me when I was vulnerable, and you betrayed me." "I did what Mom would have wanted me to do," she said, and I could hear the conviction in her voice. "She would want you to be practical, to take care of your health, to be smart with money. That car was just metal and chrome, Dad. It wasn't bringing her back, and it wasn't helping your future." "Don't you dare tell me what your mother would have wanted," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "Your mother made me promise to keep that car. She made me promise twice, once when we bought it, and again when she was dying. You've made me break a promise to the woman I loved more than my own life." "You're being ridiculous," Jessica said, her tone becoming impatient. "You won't be driving again anyway. The doctors said your driving privileges are restricted, and at your age, with your health problems, you shouldn't be driving a performance car anyway. I saved you from making a mistake that could have killed you." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She had convinced herself that she was doing me a favor, that betraying my trust and breaking my heart was somehow an act of love. "Jessica," I said, trying one more time to reach the daughter I thought I knew. "That car was all I had left of your mother. It was where our happiest memories lived. How could you take that away from me?" "Because," she said, and her voice was cold as ice, "you won't be driving again anyway." Those words hit me like a physical blow. She said them with such certainty, such finality, like she knew something I didn't know, like she had made a decision about my future without consulting me. "What do you mean?" I asked, though I was afraid of the answer. "I mean, you're 58 years old, Dad. You've had 2 heart attacks. The doctors told me privately that you probably shouldn't be driving at all anymore, especially not a car like that. You're living in a fantasy world, holding on to the past when you should be planning for a future where you're going to need more help, more medical care, more support. I'm trying to help you face reality." I realized then that Jessica hadn't just sold my car. She had made a unilateral decision about my entire life. In her mind, I was no longer capable of making my own choices. I was just a sick old man who needed to be managed and controlled for his own good. "I'm calling the police," I said. "What you did was theft, plain and simple." Jessica laughed, and it was the coldest sound I'd ever heard from my own child. "Go ahead, Dad. Call them. But I have the title with your signature on it. I have the keys you gave me. I have medical records showing you're not competent to make major financial decisions right now. Good luck proving I did anything wrong." The call ended, and I sat there in my empty garage, feeling more alone than I had since Patricia died. My daughter had not only stolen my car, she had stolen my dignity, my autonomy, and my connection to the love of my life. But Jessica had made one crucial mistake in her perfect plan. She thought she knew everything about that car, about what it meant to me and what it contained. She was wrong. You see, there was something in the trunk of that Camaro that Jessica didn't know about. Something I had never told her. Something I had never told anyone. Something that would change everything about her clever little scheme to help her irresponsible father. For the past 15 years, ever since Patricia died, I had been using the trunk of the Camaro as my personal safe deposit box. Not for anything illegal or dangerous, but for something far more valuable and far more personal. Every Sunday, when I would take the car out for my memorial drives, I would stop at different places that held special memories for Patricia and me. The lake where we had our first kiss, the church where we got married, the hospital where Jessica was born, the park where we used to take Jessica to play when she was little. At each stop, I would write Patricia a letter. Not a long letter, just a page or two telling her about my week, about how I was feeling, about how much I missed her. I would tell her about Jessica's accomplishments, about changes in the neighborhood, about things I thought she would want to know. Then I would fold each letter carefully and place it in a waterproof container in the trunk of the Camaro. Over 15 years, I had written more than 750 letters to my dead wife. They filled 3 large containers in the trunk, along with other mementos I had collected over the years. Photos of us together that I couldn't bear to keep in the house where they made me too sad to function. Pressed flowers from her funeral arrangements. The hospital bracelet she wore during her final stay. Small things that meant everything to me. Jessica knew I wrote in a journal sometimes, but she thought it was just some therapeutic thing my grief counselor had suggested years ago. She had no idea that every letter was a conversation with her mother, a way of keeping Patricia alive in my heart and mind. Those letters contained 15 years of my deepest thoughts, my most private grief, my ongoing love for a woman who could never write back. They contained stories about Jessica that I couldn't tell anyone else, confessions about my failures as a father, fears about growing old alone. They also contained something else Jessica didn't know about. 3 years ago, when I started having health problems, I had taken out a life insurance policy worth $500,000. I had never told Jessica about it because I wanted it to be a surprise, something that would ensure she was financially secure after I was gone, even if she didn't think she needed my help. But more importantly, I had hidden the policy documents in the trunk of the Camaro, along with a detailed will that left everything to Jessica, with one crucial condition. The will specified that Jessica would only inherit if she could prove that she had read and understood my letters to Patricia. I had included specific details from the letters in the will, things that only someone who had actually read them would know. My plan was to tell Jessica about the letters someday when I felt she was ready to understand the depth of my love for her mother and the importance of preserving that memory. I had also included a provision that if anything ever happened to those letters, if they were lost or destroyed or discarded, then my entire estate would go to charity instead of to Jessica. My lawyer had thought I was being overly dramatic, but he had drafted the will according to my wishes. The policy and the will were both in that trunk, wrapped in plastic and hidden beneath years of love letters to a dead woman. Jessica had no idea that in her quest to get $18,000 for a car she thought was just a burden, she had potentially cost herself $500,000 and all of her inheritance. But that wasn't even the most important thing she didn't know. The most important thing was this: Patricia hadn't just made me promise to keep the car. In her final weeks, when she was barely conscious and heavily medicated, she had whispered something to me that I had never told Jessica. "The car, Danny," she had said, her voice barely audible. "Someday, when Jessica is older, when she understands, tell her to look in the trunk. Tell her there's something there, something I left for her." I had assumed she meant metaphorically, that she wanted Jessica to understand the memories and the love that the car represented. But 2 weeks after Patricia died, when I finally worked up the courage to clean out her personal belongings, I found something that made me realize Patricia had meant something very literal. Hidden in Patricia's jewelry box, underneath a false bottom I had never known existed, was a letter addressed to Jessica, with instructions that it should only be given to her after Patricia had been gone for at least 10 years, and only if Jessica had learned to appreciate the importance of family memories and keeping promises. The letter was sealed, and Patricia had made me promise not to open it. She said it contained something that Jessica would need to know when she was mature enough to understand, something about their relationship and about our family that would help Jessica understand why some things were worth holding on to no matter what the practical cost. I had hidden that letter in the trunk of the Camaro, along with everything else, waiting for the right time to give it to Jessica. I kept thinking that time would come naturally, that someday Jessica would show some sign that she had grown beyond her practical, unsentimental approach to life, and was ready to understand the deeper meaning of love and memory and promise-keeping. That day had never come. And now, thanks to Jessica's betrayal, that letter was in the hands of a stranger in Milwaukee who had bought a car and had no idea he had also purchased the most important piece of my family's history. I sat in my empty garage and realized that Jessica had destroyed not just my connection to Patricia, but Patricia's final gift to our daughter. In her arrogance and her certainty that she knew what was best for everyone, Jessica had thrown away something that could never be replaced. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I spent the rest of that day making phone calls. First, I called Classic Car Transport Services and got the contact information for the buyer in Milwaukee. Then I called my lawyer and explained the situation. Finally, I called my cardiologist and got clearance to travel, explaining that I had a family emergency that required immediate attention. The buyer in Milwaukee was a man named Frank Peterson, a retired automotive engineer who collected classic Camaros. When I called him and explained the situation, he was sympathetic, but understandably reluctant to unwind a transaction he had made in good faith. "Mr. Morrison," he said, "I understand this is a difficult situation, but I paid good money for that car. I had no way of knowing there was a family dispute. As far as I knew, your daughter had full authority to sell it." "Mr. Peterson," I said, "I'm not asking you to give up the car for free. I'll pay you back every penny you paid, plus your expenses, plus $1,000 for your trouble. All I want is what's in the trunk. There are personal items in there that have no value to anyone but me. Letters from my deceased wife, family photos, things like that." There was a long pause, and then Frank said something that gave me hope. "You know, Mr. Morrison, I haven't actually looked in the trunk yet. The transport company delivered the car yesterday evening, and I've been so excited about the car itself that I haven't even thought about what might be in the storage areas. Tell you what, I'm a family man myself and I understand how important personal items can be. If you can get here by this weekend, we can work something out. But I'm not giving up the car itself. I've been looking for this exact model and year for 3 years." I thanked Frank and immediately booked a flight to Milwaukee for the next morning. Then I called Jessica. She answered on the second ring and her voice was cautious. "Dad, is everything okay?" "No, Jessica, everything is not okay, but I'm going to fix it." "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm flying to Milwaukee tomorrow to get back what you stole from me. And when I get back, you and I are going to have a conversation about what you've really cost yourself with your little scheme." "Dad, you're being ridiculous. You can't travel so soon after your surgery, and you can't undo the sale. It's done." "Watch me," I said, and hung up. The flight to Milwaukee was difficult for me physically, but I was running on pure determination and rage. Frank Peterson met me at his garage, and when I saw my Camaro sitting there, I almost broke down crying. It looked so out of place, So lonely in this stranger's garage instead of safely at home where it belonged. Frank was a decent man, and when he saw how emotional I was about the car, I think he understood that this was about much more than money or transportation. "Let me show you what's in the trunk," he said gently. When he opened the trunk, Frank whistled low. "Holy cow, Mr. Morrison, I had no idea. There's enough stuff in here to fill a small room." There they were, 3 large containers full of my letters to Patricia, plus the smaller box that contained her final letter to Jessica. The insurance policy and the will were there too, exactly where I had left them. Everything was intact, untouched, safe. Frank helped me transfer everything to rental car I had gotten at the airport. As promised, I paid him back for the car plus extra for his trouble, and I made him a deal. I would let him keep the car, but I wanted a written agreement that he would never sell it to anyone without giving me the first right to buy it back. "Mr. Morrison," Frank said as we shook hands, "I hope you don't mind me saying this, but your daughter made a terrible mistake. This car clearly means the world to you, and families should never destroy something that important to each other." I thanked Frank and drove straight to the airport. The drive back to Cedar Rapids was the longest 4 hours of my life, but having those letters safe in the car with me felt like having Patricia back in some small way. When I got home, I immediately called Jessica. This time, she answered on the first ring. "Dad? Did you really go to Milwaukee? Are you insane? You could have had another heart attack traveling like that." "I'm fine, Jessica. Better than fine, actually. I got back what you tried to take from me." "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the 3 containers full of love letters to your mother that were in the trunk of the car you sold. I'm talking about the life insurance policy worth $500,000 that was hidden in there. I'm talking about your mother's final letter to you that you've now made it impossible for me to give you the way she intended." The silence on the other end of the line stretched on so long that I thought the call had dropped. Finally, Jessica spoke, and her voice was small and shaky. "Dad, I had no idea. There was stuff in the trunk. I didn't. The transport company said they would handle everything. I never looked." "Of course you didn't look," I said. "You were so sure you knew everything, so certain that you were smarter than your sentimental old father. You never bothered to find out what that car actually meant or what it actually contained." $500,000? Jessica whispered. "Dad, you have life insurance. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I wanted it to be a surprise, because I wanted you to know that even though you thought I was irresponsible and impractical, I had actually planned for your future. But here's the thing, Jessica. According to the will I wrote, you only get that money if you can prove you've read and understood my letters to your mother. Letters that were almost lost forever because of what you did." Jessica started crying, and for a moment I felt sorry for her. But then I remembered how coldly she had dismissed my feelings, how certain she had been that she knew what was best for me. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I thought I was helping. I thought the car was just some old thing you were holding on to because you couldn't let go of the past." "It was the past, Jessica. But it was also the present and the future. Every letter I wrote to your mother was a way of processing my grief and keeping her memory alive. Every Sunday drive was a way of honoring the promise I made to her. That car wasn't just metal and chrome. It was 15 years of conversations with the love of my life." "Can you forgive me?" Jessica asked, and she sounded like the little girl she used to be, scared and sorry, and hoping her daddy could make everything okay. "I don't know," I said honestly. "What you did wasn't just about the car, Jessica. You decided that I was incompetent, that I couldn't make my own decisions, that you knew better than me about my own life. You violated my trust and my privacy and my autonomy. Forgiveness is going to take time." "What about Mom's letter? You said she left me a letter." I looked at the sealed envelope sitting on my kitchen table, Patricia's elegant handwriting spelling out, "For Jessica, when she's ready." "Your mother left you a letter, yes, but she made me promise only to give it to you when you had learned to appreciate the importance of family memories and keeping promises to the people we love. I don't think you're there yet." Jessica was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "What can I do to prove to you that I understand?" What can I do to earn the right to read what Mom wrote to me? That question caught me off guard. I had expected her to argue, to demand the letter, to insist that it was hers by right. Instead, she was asking to earn it. I don't know, I said. But I'll tell you this. It's going to take more than an apology. You're going to have to show me that you understand what you almost destroyed. You're going to have to prove that you respect my choices and my memories and my right to live my life the way I see fit. How long will that take? I don't know that either. But if you really want to make this right, you'll figure it out. That conversation was 3 months ago. Since then, Jessica has been trying to rebuild our relationship and prove that she understands what she did wrong. She quit her job in Chicago and moved back to Cedar Rapids to be closer to me. She got a job at a local marketing company that pays less than her Chicago position, but she says being near family is more important than money. She's been coming over every Sunday to help me with yard work and household projects. At first, I thought it was just guilt driving her to spend time with me. But gradually I've started to see glimpses of the daughter I thought I had lost years ago. 2 months ago, she asked if she could read one of my letters to Patricia. I was hesitant at first. Those letters were deeply personal, my private conversations with a dead woman. But something in Jessica's voice, a genuine curiosity and respect that I hadn't heard in years, made me reconsider. I chose one of the shorter letters, one I had written on what would have been Patricia's 50th birthday. In it, I had told Patricia about how Jessica was doing in college, about how proud we would both be of the woman she was becoming, but also about how worried I was that Jessica seemed to be losing connection with her family roots and the values Patricia had tried to instill in her. Jessica read the letter in silence, sitting at my kitchen table while I watched her face carefully. When she finished, she had tears in her eyes. "Dad," she said quietly, "you really talked to her about me? All these years you've been telling Mom about my life?" "Every week," I said. "Every Sunday I would drive to one of our special places and write her a letter. I'd tell her about your accomplishments, your struggles, how much I missed being able to share your life with her. I'd ask her advice about how to be a better father to you." Jessica wiped her eyes and looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen since she was a child. "What did you tell her about what I did? About selling the car?" I had been dreading this question, but I knew it was important to be honest. "I told her I was hurt and angry. I told her I felt like I had failed as a father because you didn't understand why your promise to someone you love should matter more than money or practicality. But I also told her that I still loved you and that I hoped we could find our way back to each other. Can I read more of them?" Over the following weeks, Jessica read dozens of my letters to Patricia. She learned about the depth of our love story, about the dreams we had shared, about the fears I had about raising a daughter alone after Patricia died. She read about my pride in her accomplishments and my sadness about the distance that had grown between us over the years. More importantly, she started to understand that the Camaro had never been just a car. It had been a sanctuary, a place where I could feel close to Patricia and process my grief in a healthy way. It had been the vessel that carried 15 years of love and memory and hope. Last month, Jessica made a decision that shocked me. She had been working double shifts and saving every penny since she moved back to Cedar Rapids, and she had managed to contact Frank Peterson in Milwaukee. "Dad," she said when she came over for our usual Sunday visit, "I have something to tell you. I bought your car back." I stared at her, not sure I had heard correctly. "You what?" "I called Mr. Peterson and offered him $25,000 for the Camaro. I know that's more than it's probably worth, but I also know what it's worth to you. He agreed to sell it back, and it's being delivered next weekend." I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. "Jessica, why would you? How did you?" "Because I finally understand," she said, and her voice was strong and certain. "I understand that some things matter more than their dollar value. I understand that keeping promises to the people we love is more important than being practical. And I understand that I almost destroyed something irreplaceable because I thought I knew better than you about your own life." The tears came then, for both of us. For the first time since Patricia died, Jessica and I held each other and cried together, not just for what we had lost, but for what we had found again. When the Camaro was delivered the following Saturday, Jessica was there to help me uncover it in the garage. It looked exactly the same as the day it had been taken away, but somehow it felt different. It felt like more than just my car now. It felt like a symbol of redemption, of second chances, of a daughter who had learned to value love over logic. "There's one more thing," Jessica said as we stood looking at the car. "I want to start coming with you on your Sunday drives. I want to visit the places where you and Mom made memories. And I want you to tell me the stories, all of them. I want to know who she really was, not just as my mother, but as the woman you fell in love with." That first Sunday drive together was awkward at first. Jessica had never really listened to my stories about Patricia before, and I had gotten out of the practice of sharing them with anyone. But as we drove to the lake where Patricia and I used to park and watch the sunset, something magical happened. I started talking, really talking, about Patricia in a way I never had with Jessica. I told her about our first date, about the way Patricia laughed at my terrible jokes, about the dreams we had shared for our future. I told her about the day Jessica was born and how Patricia had cried with joy when she held her for the first time. And Jessica listened. Really listened. She asked questions about things she had been too young to remember, about family traditions that had died with Patricia, about the woman who had shaped both our lives in ways we were only beginning to understand. As we sat in the car watching the sunset over the lake, Jessica said something that made my heart soar. "Dad, I understand now why you made that promise to Mom. And I want to make you a promise too. I promise I will never again dismiss something that matters to you just because I don't understand it. I promise I will respect your choices and your memories and your right to grieve and love in your own way. And I promise that when the time comes, I will help you keep this car and these letters and Mom's memory alive for as long as I live." That's when I knew she was ready. When we got home that evening, I went to my bedroom and retrieved Patricia's letter from the safe where I had been keeping it. Jessica was sitting in the living room, looking through photo albums of her childhood that we had found while cleaning out some boxes. "Jessica," I said, holding out the sealed envelope, "your mother wanted you to have this." Jessica looked at the letter, then at me, and I could see that she understood the significance of this moment. "She wrote this for me?" "She wrote it during her final weeks. She made me promise to give it to you only when you were ready to understand the importance of family and memory and keeping promises to the people we love. I think that day has finally come." Jessica took the letter with shaking hands. "Should I read it now or?" "That's up to you. It's your letter from your mother. You get to decide when and where and how you want to read it." Jessica looked at the envelope for a long moment, then carefully opened it. The letter was written on Patricia's personal stationery, the pale blue paper with her monogram that she had used for special occasions. Her handwriting was shaky. She had been very weak when she wrote it, but every word was legible. As Jessica read, I watched her face change. She smiled, then frowned, then smiled again. She laughed once, softly, and then started crying. The letter was longer than I had expected. Patricia had somehow found the strength to write several pages. When Jessica finished reading, she looked up at me with wonder in her eyes. "Dad, did you know what she wrote?" "No. She made me promise not to read it. She said it was between you and her." Jessica wiped her eyes and looked back at the letter. She told me things about herself that I never knew. About her own relationship with her mother, about mistakes she made when she was young, about fears she had about dying and leaving us behind. She paused, then continued. But mostly, she wrote about love. About how the strongest love isn't always the most practical or logical, but it's the kind that lasts beyond death and beyond time. She said that someday I would understand why you kept the car and why promises matter more than money. Jessica looked up at me again, and her eyes were shining. "She also wrote something else, Dad. She wrote that she had hidden something for me, something that would help me understand our family's history. She said to look in the small toolbox in the trunk, the one you probably never noticed. My heart stopped. In all the years I had been using the trunk as storage for my letters, I had never paid attention to Patricia's old toolbox, a small metal container she had kept emergency supplies in when we first bought the car. I had assumed it was empty. We went out to the garage together and Jessica opened the trunk. Sure enough, there was the small red toolbox, pushed into a corner behind one of my letter containers. Jessica lifted it out and opened it carefully. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper and plastic to protect it from time and moisture, was Patricia's wedding ring. But that wasn't all. Underneath the ring was a small leather journal, bound with a ribbon. Jessica opened it carefully and we saw that it was filled with Patricia's handwriting, but not letters. These were poems, dozens of them, written over the years we were together. "She wrote poetry?" Jessica asked, her voice full of amazement. "I had no idea," I said honestly. "She never told me." Jessica read the first poem aloud, and it was about the day we bought the Camaro, about the feeling of freedom and possibility that came with driving down an open road with the person you love. The second was about the day Jessica was born. The third was about a Sunday afternoon when we had taken baby Jessica to the lake for a picnic. As Jessica continued reading, I realized that Patricia had been documenting our life together in poetry, capturing moments and feelings and experiences that even my detailed memory had forgotten. These poems were her love letters to our family, her way of preserving the beauty and joy of ordinary moments that make up a life shared with people you love. The final poem in the journal was dated just a week before Patricia died. It was addressed to Jessica, and it was about the importance of understanding that love isn't just about the big moments, the weddings and births and celebrations. It's about the small, daily choices to put someone else's happiness before your own, to honor their dreams even when you don't fully understand them, to keep promises even when they're inconvenient. The last lines of the poem read, "My darling daughter, when you read this someday, know that love is not always easy or logical or practical, but it is always worth it. Keep your promises. Honor your memories. And never be afraid to love someone so much that losing them would break your heart. Because a broken heart that has truly loved is worth more than a safe heart that has never risked anything." When Jessica finished reading, we were both crying again. But these weren't tears of sadness or regret. They were tears of gratitude, of connection, of understanding that love really can transcend death and time. "Dad," Jessica said, "I want to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. Of course, if I hadn't sold the car, if I had never betrayed your trust, would you have given me Mom's letter anyway? Would you have eventually thought I was ready?" I considered her question carefully. "I don't know," I said finally. "You were so determined to move forward, to leave the past behind, to be practical about everything. I kept waiting for some sign that you understood that some things are worth holding on to no matter what the cost. I'm not sure that sign would have come if you hadn't learned the hard way what you almost lost." Jessica nodded slowly. "So, in a weird way, my betrayal led to something beautiful." "I wouldn't go that far," I said with a small smile. "What you did still hurt me deeply, and it could have destroyed something irreplaceable. But yes, in the end, it led to us finding our way back to each other. It led to you discovering parts of your mother you never knew existed. It led to this moment, right here, right now." That was 6 weeks ago. Since then, Jessica and I have taken the Camaro out every Sunday, visiting the places that mattered to Patricia and me, reading her poems aloud, and creating new memories together. Jessica has started writing her own letters to Patricia, telling her mother about her life and her new understanding of what family really means. Last Sunday, as we were sitting by the lake where Patricia and I used to park, Jessica said something that made me realize our journey of healing was complete. "Dad, I've been thinking about something. When you die someday, and I hope that's many, many years from now, I want you to know that I will take care of the car and the letters and Mom's poems. I will keep your Sunday tradition alive. And someday, if I have children of my own, I will teach them about the importance of keeping promises and honoring the people we love." She paused, then added, "And I want you to know that I understand now what Mom meant in her letter. She said love isn't always logical or practical, but it's always worth it. What you've done all these years, keeping her memory alive through this car and these drives and these letters, it's not practical, but it's the most beautiful thing I've ever witnessed." I reached over and took my daughter's hand, and for the first time in 15 years, I felt like Patricia was really there with us, approving of the people we had become and the love we had found again. The insurance policy is still in effect, and Jessica will still inherit everything when I'm gone. But more importantly, she has inherited something far more valuable, an understanding of what it means to love someone so deeply that you would keep promises to them even after they're gone, even when it's inconvenient, even when other people think you're being foolish. She learned that some things, like love, like memory, like family, are worth more than their practical value. She learned that betraying someone's trust, even with good intentions, can destroy something beautiful and irreplaceable. And she learned that forgiveness and redemption are possible, but only when someone is willing to do the hard work of understanding what they've done wrong and making it right. Today is Sunday, and in a few hours Jessica and I will take the Camaro out for our weekly drive. We'll stop at the lake, and I'll write Patricia a letter telling her about this video, about the story I've shared with all of you, about how proud I am of the woman our daughter has become. Jessica will write her own letter, probably telling Patricia about the new marketing campaign she's working on, or about the man she's been dating. A good man who understands the importance of family and doesn't think it's weird that she spends her Sundays visiting memories with her father. And then we'll drive home together. 3 generations of love somehow present in that car. Patricia in our memories and our promises, me in my stubborn refusal to let go of what matters, and Jessica in her hard-won understanding that some things are worth holding on to no matter what the practical cost. The moral of this story isn't just about betrayal and forgiveness, though. Those are certainly part of it. It's about understanding that the things we love aren't always logical or practical, but that doesn't make them less valuable. It's about the importance of keeping promises, especially the promises we make to people who can no longer hold us accountable. It's about the fact that love transcends death, that memory is a form of immortality, and that sometimes the most important gifts we can give our children aren't practical things like money or career advice, but understanding about what really matters in life. Jessica thought she was being smart when she sold my car. She thought she was helping me be practical and responsible. She had no idea that in that trunk, along with 15 years of love letters to her dead mother, was her entire inheritance, her mother's final gift to her, and the key to understanding what our family was really about. She said, "You won't be driving again anyway," with such certainty, such dismissal of my autonomy and my choices. She thought she knew what was best for me better than I knew myself. She was wrong about everything, but in being wrong, in learning from her mistakes, in doing the hard work of rebuilding trust and understanding, Jessica discovered something far more valuable than the money she thought she was helping me secure. She discovered what it means to be part of a family that loves deeply enough to keep promises across decades, across death, across the practical considerations that make such promises seem foolish to the outside world. So here's what I want you to take away from this story. Don't assume you know what's best for someone else, especially when it comes to the things they love. Don't dismiss something as impractical or sentimental just because you don't understand its value. And if you ever betray someone's trust, even with good intentions, be prepared to do whatever it takes to make it right. Because sometimes the things that seem like burdens or obsessions or wastes of money are actually the most valuable things a person possesses. Sometimes a promise made to someone who's dying is worth more than any practical consideration. And sometimes an old car isn't just transportation. It's a time machine, a sanctuary, a keeper of secrets that can change everything. Jessica learned this lesson the hard way, and it almost cost her everything. But she learned it, and that's what matters. She learned that love isn't always logical, but it's always worth it. She learned that some promises are worth keeping no matter what the cost, and she learned that the best gifts aren't always the most practical ones. Every Sunday now, when Jessica and I take that Camaro out for our drive, I'm reminded that redemption is possible, that families can heal, and that love really can conquer betrayal if everyone involved is willing to do the work. The car is back where it belongs. The letters are safe. Patricia's poems are being read and cherished. And Jessica has become the daughter I always hoped she would be, not just successful and independent, but understanding and compassionate and willing to value love over logic. That's worth more than any amount of money, more than any practical consideration, more than any convenience or efficiency. That's worth keeping promises for. That's worth fighting for. And that's why sometimes when someone you love says you won't be driving again anyway, the best response is to prove them wrong in ways they never imagined possible. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps you understand that the things we love, the promises we make, the memories we keep, the connections we maintain with people who are no longer physically with us, those things aren't burdens or obsessions or wastes of time and money. They're the most valuable things we possess. And they're always worth protecting no matter what anyone else thinks is practical. If this story moved you, if it made you think about the promises you've made or the things you value that others might not understand, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories about family, love, and the things that really matter in life. Share this video with someone who needs to understand that not everything valuable can be measured in dollars and cents. And leave a comment below telling me about something you've held on to that others thought was impractical, because I guarantee you're not alone, and your story matters too. Remember, love isn't always logical, but it's always worth it. Keep your promises, honor your memories, and never let anyone convince you that the things you love are worthless just because they can't understand their value. Until next time, take care of each other. And remember that sometimes the most important treasures are the ones hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to change everything.